Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Al here, and I'm with a lady who's been a guest on this show a few times. Jackie Shea. She's an American Texan, specifically, a mom, a wife, a blogger, an evangelical Christian, and I'm sure she's some more things as well. And and we're here to talk about the election. Jackie, how are you doing down south?
I am great. I think every American on the right and every Texan mostly is great this week.
And your friends north of the 49th parallel are the right wing ones are happy for you.
Thank you.
So yeah, there's some happiness north of the border here because in 1 year we are going to have our equivalent steamrolling election.
God willing.
We just got to wait a bit, but it's going to be good. Justin Trudeau is going to go down in flames.
High time.
All right, so a lot of people are probably wondering, why are we talking so late? The election was over a week ago. Well, believe it or not, the counting's not even finished. In terms of the House isn't yet fully counted. I mean, it's getting toward the end, and it looks like the Republicans will have the House, but um, again, it's not fully counted, so it's not a big deal in that regard. So, Jackie, I got to ask you. If someone were to ask you the day before the election, who do you think would win? What would you have said?
So I would have said Trump. And I had said that when I was when I got the opportunity to do that radio show, the Armand and Akil show. They asked me, and that was in October. They said, and they're Canadian as well. They said, who do you think would win it? And I said, well, I'd have to say Trump. I think, though, I had no confidence that was a sure thing at all. The reason, though, that I thought it was heavy leaning Trump is, number one, the polls. The polls had him tied or slightly behind, which for Trump is amazing polling. You know how far they underestimated him last time, like 10 points. So people kept, honestly, leftists online were yelling at me when I would say, great poll for Trump. And they would be like, that's not a great poll. He's 2 points behind. I'd be like, no, that's a great poll for Trump. So it was like polling, and then registration data was way in his favor. It was really good this year. But I mean, the PSYOP was strong. They did have me worried. And they did have me worried that, women were going to come out in droves to the polls to vote for abortion, which, too many came, but we pulled it out.
Yeah, for me, my answer was, because some people were asking me, because I follow politics fairly closely. Some people were asking me, Alan, who's going to win tomorrow or a couple days from now, before the election? And I said, it's a coin toss. And then they said, okay, but if you had to pick one person, I said, well, I would pick Trump then.
Yeah.
A coin toss with a slight edge in Trump's favor.
That's how I felt about it. But it felt up and down.
Yeah, and the reason, like, I saw the same polls you did, and I thought the same thing, but I just thought, Joe Biden's 81 million voters were going to come out. Of course, we know that number is fake now. That election was rigged. But I was worried about his 81 million voters. But at the same time, I also knew that the people on the ground game of Trump in the swing states knew about the fraud last time. And so they were prepared for anything. And a lot of states, I don't know if all the swing states, but had passed election integrity laws and laws to that effect to try to prevent, because they knew something fishy was going on. Like all of a sudden.
And, it's always been my position that I don't know how much fraud there was or where it was, but there was not appropriate transparency. I still don't think there is. So I do suspect there was some. I think in Georgia was one of the most suspicious, to be honest, but there's so much election integrity. There were so many measures that went through this time when we got rid of Ronna McDaniel, or is that her name? She was Romney previously. I think so. The head of the RNC. She was honestly, I think, doing a terrible job. And Laura Trump came in. And I guess she had skin in the game, so she did a fantastic job.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
like that ground game was impeccable. Like as someone, who's been a campaign manager before, who's worked on several campaigns, like that ground game was great. The ground game on election day and the days leading up into the election,
And the left was saying that we had no ground game. I don't know if you heard that going around.
yeah, I heard
Yeah.
that a bit in the media.
Yeah, that was like the big thing, that the right has no ground game. They're not putting money into it, but really they had outsourced it to Scott Pressler's group in Pennsylvania and Charlie Kirk's group, which did Arizona and North Carolina and all that. So, I mean, whatever they did, it worked. It was good.
Scott Pressler is a legend for what he did. Like,
I know. And I told you I was using his app, the Early Vote Action app. And like, that was the first time I tried to get involved in something like that. Like, that's why I had said, I'm not MAGA. I haven't been previously attached to that. I voted against Trump in the primaries, not this time because DeSantis was already out of the race by the time we did our primary, but I would have voted for DeSantis. So I'm not like this big Trump activist, but this time I was writing postcards, like hundreds of them through Scott Pressler's app to Pennsylvania. And I'm so glad now. I'm so glad I did.
So, did anything surprise you about this election?
It surprised me he won by that much. I thought he might. People were saying, wow, he could even get 312. And that was like the pipe dream, right? I hoped, but I thought it was going to be a lot closer. I was surprised married women went for Trump. I'm one of them. I'm so glad. I think it was 51%. So yeah, it was close, but they were saying the women are going to storm the polls and all they care about is abortion. And that was not true. That was, for the single women, that was definitely their big issue, I think. But for the married women, different priorities, praise God. And I was surprised by that. I was happy. And let me think what else. I mean, I was surprised they called it on election night. I was ready for a week of torture, a month of torture. All that was
well, that's interesting you brought that up, because one time during the summer, someone asked me who was going to win. And I'm like, well, if we find out the results the day of the election, Trump.
Yeah.
If it's a long count, Harris.
Yeah, and that's how I felt too. It's like, even though I say I was optimistic for Trump, if this dragged on, I wouldn't have been optimistic. So when I saw them start to call the swing states, that was a good feeling for sure.
I heard now I've not confirmed this, but I've heard that in Pennsylvania, that they were going to do the same thing as last time. They were going to shut down the counting, and then Lara Trump's team is like, the heck you are, And
yeah, I heard lots of things like that out of Pennsylvania, and they were fighting all these ridiculous lawsuits right up until the end. But I think really, the whole thing the Trump campaign kept saying was too big to rig. And I really think that's what happened. I think if these races would have been closer, like we see this Senate race, they're still in Pennsylvania. They're still trying to do some kind of legal action there because the Democrat, it looks like, has been unseated and he doesn't want to concede it. And that's a much closer race. But it's like he was ahead by a large enough margin. There was just nothing to contest, which is miraculous. It's amazing.
Yeah, so as of now, the Senate is 53 Republican, 47 Democrats.
Right.
A gain of 4 for the Republicans, loss of 4 for the Dems. So they won back the Senate. In terms of the House, I mentioned it's not quite done, but Republicans are at 216, the Dems are at 207, and the Republicans are leading in several races throughout the country. So,
and I think the decision desk may have called up to 218 for the Republicans, I think, because I heard somebody saying that this morning, but we'll see. We'll see throughout. I don't know if that's accurate. I just heard that this morning. That would be good. We're going to run into a little trouble potentially since Trump is picking some of these representatives for his cabinet. And they're going to go to special elections, like Elise Stefanik's seat, I think, in the House. That one could be a problem. I don't think it will, but I think that's something Republicans are a little worried about right now because it's going to be such a small margin. I think we're going to be ahead for sure, but it's just by how many and how much can we get done with a tiny margin. But I'm not complaining. I thought we were going to lose the House, just odds. So
yeah, in fact, they were talking about that on election night. It's like, well, Trump won the presidency and the Senate, but he'll probably lose the House, and it's looking like it's going to be a win for the House, a razor thin win, but a win nevertheless.
Oh, and you asked what was a surprise to me. That was a surprise to me. I did not think we were going to get the trifecta. I'm thrilled about that, and that's going to be so important for Trump to actually get his agenda forward, his legislation. So
what's the mood specifically in Texas, in your home state?
The mood is fantastic. I think I mentioned to you that I had to go to a field trip the morning after the election for my son, and it was an early morning field trip. Well, all of us had been up till 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m., and we were exhausted. All these moms were exhausted, but they were like, no one cared. Everyone was so excited. Everyone was so pumped. Everyone was smiling at each other with bags under their eyes. So that's still the mood.
Coffee in the hand.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone was whispering, like, how late did you stay up? And everyone 3 in the morning, whatever it was. Because I think they called Pennsylvania about 2:30 in the morning. I was planning to go to sleep just because I had to be up, but I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to watch it. So that was fun. That was a fun evening for sure. And I stayed up and watched Trump's speech, then tried to get a few hours of sleep. But the mood is very good. Most people, it's like I live in a big city, so the city itself does lean blue, but my neighborhood, my region, and my friends definitely are Republican. So everyone's pumped.
Yes. Again, Canada has to wait a year for our steamroll.
Yeah.
It will happen, though. It will happen.
I think so, too.
And yeah, hopefully Pierre Poilievre enlists the help of Elon Musk. What did you think of the collaboration with Elon Musk and Dana White and Joe Rogan? And
oh gosh, so that's fascinating. I guess the collaboration with Elon made me a little nervous, just because I'm like, okay, a billionaire throwing all his weight into the campaign. Is he going to have undue influence? That's what you always worry about with a billionaire. We have so few billionaires, though, in our corner. So I was like, oh, well, so be it. Let's see how it works out. Obviously, he made a huge difference. I didn't really love his $1 million a day giveaway, although I was happy for the people that won it. I just thought, is this legal? Can you do this? And apparently, they challenged it and he can do it. And he wouldn't have done it if he couldn't do it legally. So that was interesting. That was an interesting tactic. He threw everything at it, but that speaks to how strongly he felt about Trump. And I think, he has been a Democrat in the past, pretty apolitical, but outspoken occasionally, a big fan of Obama. I think this is probably his first Republican vote. So the fact that he would put so much money into it, that he would put all this effort into it and put his name on the line, because really he was just popular, just totally popular. And now he's hated by the entire left. And I think he's maybe enemy number one. It's hard to tell whether it's him or Trump right now, but the media really hates him because buying X unshackled so much of our side to actually tell the truth and to combat their narratives. So as far as him joining, I think I go so far as to say it was semi-miraculous. I think it was the will of God that this particular billionaire would get activated by the left. And he has said specifically by the transgender push that affected his family to enter this race and to change the conversation, and mostly by just letting people speak. I know probably it was your experience as well. 4 years ago, I was much more careful about what I said online. Now I say whatever I want.
well, at least on X.
On X, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a bit I had a guest on yesterday, and he starts going on about the alphabet community, and I'm like, we're not on X, buddy. Tone it down a bit.
Right. Okay. Am I okay? I'll be careful.
You're
Um,
fine. Yeah, you're fine.
but yeah, I think that was amazing. As for Joe Rogan and Dana White, they're not traditional allies to the Republican Party for sure, especially Rogan, who has leaned left, if anything. But again, it's free speech, and it's just this authoritarian threat that people are perceiving. I don't think it helped either that Rogan offered Kamala a chance to come on his show, and she wouldn't even sit down at the table. Same thing that happened with RFK. RFK wanted to talk to her, wouldn't even answer him back, wouldn't even respond.
And you know I'm Catholic. I know you have some Catholic family as well.
Yeah.
He didn't go to the Al Smith thingy.
Insane.
Yeah, and
Only one other candidate has ever done that. I think it was Walter Mondale, and he lost badly. That is such a foolish move. And also, they needed the Catholic vote. And I sent you that statistic. I can't remember what it was, but it was really significant, like 15 points more for Trump this time than Biden got last time. And Biden's Catholic. Of course, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
but,
there's an asterisk by his
yeah.
He probably doesn't even know what Catholic means anymore, because
I know, poor man. I continually feel sorry for him, but then I remember everything he stands for, and I don't feel as badly for him anymore.
I do actually think, I still think a lot of people don't think this makes a difference, but I still think he should resign as president.
Oh gosh, I hope not. Well, you think he should just morally because he's not up to the job?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what he should do.
He's comatose, essentially.
Oh, probably. But at this point, he should have done that 6 months ago or more.
Yeah, he should
have never even run. I think he was already. I think that's why he had the basement campaign. I think he was already on the decline 4 years ago. But he should have stepped down at some point. Now I hope he doesn't, because I don't want Kamala Harris to be president. I just feel like pleased that she won't be.
Well, I've talked to a couple of my more thoughtful friends on the left, and they're like, what could Kamala have done differently to win? And they said what should have happened was 2 years ago, Joe Biden should have stepped down and let her run, so she actually had a bit of a resume to go off of, instead of trying to invent it on the fly.
Well, if he wanted her to run, and if she wanted to run, then that would have been the best course of action. However, I don't think she should have ever been the nominee. I don't think she would have been. There's all these conspiracy theories, that she actually wasn't meant to be, that there was supposed to be an open primary, but because Biden had been deposed in that embarrassing manner, that he just went ahead and endorsed her and forced the issue, and they had to get behind her. I don't know if that's true or not. I do know if they'd had more time, they would have had an open primary, and it would not have been her. She was the least popular vice president by a huge margin that we've ever had. And her campaign in 2020, I don't think she got a single primary vote. She had to drop out so early. She's just not a good candidate, not a good politician, and way too far left. Even the Democrats would not choose someone that far left if they had an easier choice. It's my
I don't know who this is. Is this a friend of yours?
No, not yet, but a new friend in the chat.
All right. So not a couple minutes ago, you mentioned Obama. Do you see a big difference between Obama and Kamala Harris, Joe Biden? Is there a big difference between the two, or is same file?
I think still the Obama agenda, but I think the difference is that Obama is the leading character. He is a much more talented politician, much more charismatic, much more intelligent. Biden was just the sidekick. And, we joke, oh, Kamala Harris was a DEI hire. Yes, Biden admitted it, but so was Biden. He needed the white older guy. And Biden, he was a lifelong politician, but not a particularly great one either. He had lost he had to pull out of his run for president in the 80s for plagiarism. His whole career almost laughable, the way that he just lies about the silliest things. Not a great candidate, but the best they had. obviously. So Obama, I just think a much more talented politician and probably pulling the strings here behind Biden and definitely behind Kamala Harris.
Well, I think if you go back to 2008 when Obama was the candidate, he was the celebrity candidate, and um he beat and he won. He beat Clinton out, and he picked Biden. I was kind of shocked originally why he didn't pick someone better, because I could have thought of 3 or 4 people who were much better than Joe
Right.
Biden was. But I think he picked Biden because they knew they had that election in the bag, and he didn't really want any threats. He didn't want a
Yeah.
superstar candidate because he wanted to do all the superstar
I
stuff.
think that's
So,
true.
yeah.
I also think he was so new on the scene. He needed some legitimacy. So Biden has been in politics forever. He's one of those entrenched politicians. So it was like, and here's the guy who's been here forever supporting me. That's my theory.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think there's a lot of legitimacy to that. Um, you have some well, I'll skip that question actually. What do you think caused Trump to win the swing states and the popular vote?
Okay, let's think about that. The swing states, they really truly are swing states. They're pretty purple. And I think Kamala Harris being such a far left candidate, I think she was too far left, believe it or not, for the swing states. These are salt of the earth people, a lot of them. Like I do have a lot of relatives in Pennsylvania. I know Pennsylvania more than I know the other swing states. And
That's what I was going to ask you. I
yeah,
kind of aborted a question. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
should I mention if she is? But
Oh, that's okay. No, they'd be
okay.
fine. We won't be specific. Um, but no, I think it's okay even to say the cities because you don't know my relatives. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are where I have most of my relatives, and those are big blue cities, particularly Philadelphia. And things were so different this year. When I was back visiting, I felt something different on the ground. Usually there are pride flags in July hanging from every house, and when I was back there, I go back for July. When I was back there 4 years ago, Biden signs everywhere. This time around, very minimal. I saw some Trump signs. I never have seen Trump signs there. So that was like either no signs or pretty even, or in even some places more Trump signs. Definitely less rainbow flags, which was a weird sea change. I was like, what's making them fly the rainbow flags less? But those people, especially in Pittsburgh, they really are a lot. A lot of the people who live there very working class. And when we say what happened with Kamala Harris, the economy is terrible in a lot of ways, and she could not say what she would do differently. I think if there was one thing, yeah, they didn't like how far left she was, but even more than that, I would say they just want to see changes in grocery prices. I know it sounds so basic, and that's what the campaign kept trying to drive home, but that's exactly why. A
That's
lot
what
of
we're talking about in Canada
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, okay, I didn't even know, but I would assume, usually we're pretty similar. The problems we have, you have, and vice versa. So yeah, I think people were just like, this is, what are you going to do differently than Biden? And on The View, very famously, they tried to give her a softball question and she couldn't answer. She said she couldn't think of a single thing she'd do differently. That's what people voted on. If she would have said, oh, I love Joe Biden, and he did a lot of great things, but there's some changes that need to be made, and this is one that I would make on day one. But she never could do that. I think people were just like, okay, well then you represent Biden, and we're done with Biden for now, which is a big deal because Scranton Joe in Pennsylvania still went to the right.
So yeah, speaking of swing states, like we're the same age. I think we're born in the same year.
Yeah.
And if you notice, growing up, like in the George Bush, in both of his elections, and in the first 2 Obama elections, I guess the only 2 Obama elections, the big swing states were Ohio and Florida. And now
Right.
they've gone
Right.
from purple back to red, it seems.
which is wonderful. And they have. I think they're solid red now. There were some Democrats who were saying Florida's in play, mostly because Hillary Clinton went down there for some event. And now I think it's pretty clear she went down there to try to save the down ballots. That was never in play. That's shifted very far to the right, which I'm thrilled about. It's looking like other states now are going to be swing states. Virginia might end up being a swing state in the future. That one's been pretty solid blue. I know Scott Pressler, who does the activism in Pennsylvania, has been saying he's going to turn Pennsylvania red for the next presidential cycle, and it's already a swing state. So things are shifting. But then we have states that used to be more reliable, like New Mexico, that's just
Like
solid.
Arizona.
Arizona is a swing. New Mexico is deep blue. That one used to be a swing. So we have some going in the other direction too, which is unfortunate.
In 2008, when Obama wave, completely crushed the Republicans, they said that McCain was going to lose Arizona. Of course, that's his home state, right? And that didn't even happen. He won Arizona. Back when Obama had his huge amount of votes,
Well,
but
exactly. Oh, I was just going to say he's still pretty popular in Arizona, which they say might be why Carrie Lake lost her race for the Senate. I guess she was really critical of McCain Republicans, and there's still a lot of McCain Republicans around.
Okay. And well, that's interesting. That's Scott. So Scott Presser has said he's committed to turning the state red. Then
that's what he said. He said he's going to stay there. I would figured, he moved to Pennsylvania to.
Yeah, he bought a house.
Yeah, he bought a house, and I had thought, oh well, he'll live there for a little while and he'll move back out. But he said he's staying, and he's going to work on the midterms, and then he's going to work on the next presidential election. And he wants it to be. He says he wants it to be solid red state by the time we vote again, which would change everything if he could achieve that. And the guy is a dynamo. If he could put 4 years into that, maybe he could.
Yeah, no, it's that was one of the most impressive things. I knew there's a chance Trump could win without Pennsylvania, but I mean, I think if he had Pennsylvania, it's over.
Yeah.
I didn't expect Trump to take all the swing states. That was probably the biggest shock. And the popular vote. He won the popular vote by, I think the count's at about 3.5 million now. California's taken forever to count because I don't know why.
I had started to get more optimistic about the popular vote just because, it's so funny when I would speak to people I knew, there just wasn't much support for her. I have some relatives, usually quite far left in Pennsylvania, that were not positive about her. And I was shocked. I expected them to be on board with her, and they just weren't. So then I started to hope. I started to think he could really take this and he could get the popular vote. But I wasn't counting on it. It's awesome it turned out that way, though, for sure.
On election night, I stayed up pretty late. I stayed up to about 2:30, 3 o'clock, same as you. But I was watching the Young Turks, who are, of course, far left. And I noticed that Anna Kasparian, who's a leftist, but I think she's a more intelligent leftist than a lot of other ones. She's coming around on a lot of stuff. Yeah. She said at one point, I'm paraphrasing, of course, that essentially the left needs to chuck identity politics and focus on issues that that the average person cares about, like how much, like you talked in Pennsylvania about like how much $100 can buy you of groceries. Yeah. All of a sudden, they can only buy you half the amount of groceries. Right. What do you think of that? Do they need to change tactics, and will they change tactics?
I hope they don't, because I think they do need to. She's right. Something that's interesting, I don't know about her because she has been moving towards sanity. I still disagree with her on most things, but she has been sort of the voice of reason among their podcasts for a while. But most people did not admit that they needed to adjust this at all until she lost. Do you know Joe Scarborough on Morning
Yep.
Joe, MSNBC?
Yep.
The guy is nuts, and he's so far left. He's so extreme. As soon as she lost, he starts saying all these common sense things like, "Well, I've been telling people for years we have to get males out of women's sports since 85% of Americans don't approve of it." And it's like, "Well, where were you, Joe? 7 days ago, if this was really something that people should be concerned about in your party." But they're feeling that. I think they know because did you see the Trump ad, which is like, Kamala's not for you, she's for they them?
I didn't see that because keep in mind, well, one, I got YouTube Premium, so I don't see the ads, and
Yeah.
two, I think I think I would need to activate my VPN to see them because I don't think they would show those outside America.
Well, apparently, that ad was considered the most successful of the whole cycle, and people were referencing that ad in exit polls as
I
something
should
that,
look that up.
yeah, you should look it up as
I'm
something
sure
that
I
made
can find
sense
it.
to them. And that was just showing how far left she is on that issue. And she was given a chance to adjust her position or clarify it on Fox News with Bret Baier, and she wouldn't do it. She just said, "I'll follow the law." And he was like, "Well, you will have a lot of control over the laws." And she just kept repeating, "I'll follow the law," which is bad news because the laws she would want would be very much in favor of all that madness. So I think it made a big difference. I really think the women's sports issue was huge for a lot of Americans, even people that maybe lean left, even people like the Joe Rogans of the world. There's a line, and the Democrats have gone so far past that line. When we get to the abortion issue too, so far past that line,
That's next.
yeah, even though unfortunately most people in America would want some form of abortion, not me, but just with polling, they don't want what the Democrats were going for, which is elective, on demand, no restrictions at any time for any reason. Most people would want some restriction. So they've gone too far left on everything. And the average person could see that, I think.
Yeah, it it got to the point, I think, where a lot of their base, a lot of the typical Democratic base, not the fringe parts of the party, but the base, was starting to get alienated from the party. And now I don't think for the most part that they'd vote Republican. Maybe a couple did, but I think a good chunk of them would stay home maybe. And
I think that's what happened with my relatives, but I don't know this. Like, I'm not sure how they voted. I just know they would usually vote left, and it's my suspicion that they just didn't vote with. And I have Republican relatives in Pennsylvania as well, but the ones on the left, I think they were just unenthusiastic, and they couldn't get behind some of these things, which is why they shouldn't have run her, and why they should have controlled themselves far earlier on these issues. They let radicals within their party completely take over and police speech and police thought and cancel people. And people are rejecting it, I believe. I hope. That was a big element, and it's looking like it was.
all right, you brought up abortion. Let's go there. Trump, in his first term, he did a lot for the pro-life movement. By appointing the justices that would eventually turn over Roe v. Wade.
Right.
But in the second term, he did not run really on a pro-life ticket. He just said, "Oh, it's up to the states now. If
Yeah.
there's an abortion ban, I'll veto it." He did not run a pro-life campaign. Now, now he didn't, go, abortion's a holy sacrament or something, but like those on the left, but he kind of stayed on the fence about it. What say you?
That was disappointing as a pro-life Christian. I think politically it was very savvy. I think, but that doesn't make me happy about it. I think it was a good political move because when Roe versus Wade was overturned, it became this huge issue for the Democrats that they could use. It's why they won the midterms, which is why they went so hard on it this election, thinking it could win for them. What he wanted to do was just take it off the table, not make it a Republican issue at all. However, when he removed that language from the RNC, our policies, official policies that they unveiled there. It had some language against abortion, but it was so tepid compared to what we would usually have. That was all disappointing, and I think he lost some Christian votes for that. As far as I go, that gives me pause as well, but I'm always really pragmatic. So it's like, who is going to achieve more of the Christian goals? Who is going to do less evil? Who is going to do more evil? I think it was unquestionable because Harris, of course, it was her number one issue. She wanted to enshrine it. She voted against against protecting children born alive from abortions, about demanding care or resuscitation for these children. Of course, that's consistent, though. If you're okay with killing them, why would you feel they have to be saved when they're accidentally born? But it's still disgusting. It's shocking. She voted against against pain-capable abortions, or she voted for them, really, against any restrictions on them. Just shocking stuff. And Trump, at least, he was pressured. He came out against Amendment 4 in Florida, which would have enshrined that in their constitution. At first, he was waffling on it, and then he came out and he said, this is too far, this is too extreme. But he definitely was saying some things that made me angry. The main thing that was making me angry, it's like I was even willing to tolerate him being neutral on it and leaving it to the states, because I feel like that's all we can achieve politically right now. However, sometimes he would come out and say things about how he thought some of the Republican states had gone too far in protecting the unborn. And he'd be like, that's too far, that's too early. That really annoyed me. I was like, stay quiet, please, on that. If we're leaving it to the states, leave it to the states. So he's not the perfect candidate, and he has a lot of improvement on this issue, but it was a purely political move, in my opinion.
Well, and also something that shocked me, that I think 2-3 weeks before the election, his wife's biography came out, and she firmly came out in favor of abortion rights in that biography.
She did, which was so surprising, especially because she doesn't even hardly speak or get political. She's mostly just a pleasant background character, which also, I mean, I don't want to take away her agency, but since she hasn't been involved in the past, it made me think that honestly, that might have been inserted more for Trump's goals, more for the Trump campaign's plans than it was her deeply held belief. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Either way, they knew that was going to be released at that time, and they were fine with it. And Trump was out there, promoting her book. So yeah, that was very odd. I feel like what we ended up with here is he has a lot of great policies. So he's a guy with a lot of great policies who will leave this to the states. And then we had Harris, who wanted to federalize it and expand it. So, but it was very disappointing. And it made you wonder, because people said at the time in 2016, he's not pro-life. He's not pro-life. He's just making a deal with you. And I always said, well, then I'd love to make that deal. That's fantastic. Let's make the deal. I'd rather he personally felt this, but if he will make the deal, which he did, and he said he would appoint the justices, and he did, and they overturned it. Unfortunately, when they overturned it, that makes a really difficult political situation where now it is at the state level. I would love to see it. I would love to see a constitutional amendment to protect life. We're so far from that. That's a far future dream and goal. I think we do have to fight on the state level at this point. And my point of view was disappointing with Trump, but at least we can fight on the state level. And me being in Texas, we have very strong laws to protect the unborn here in Texas. I was like, a vote for Trump for me is a vote for Texas, to protect the unborn in Texas, which is important too, especially when Harris would love to pass, every abortion law here in Texas and in every state, and said she would actually send the DOJ against states that passed their own protections.
That is so sketchy. Yeah. Now, abortion was on the ballot in, I believe, 10 states, and I believe it didn't go the way we wanted, except I think in 3 states, Nebraska, South Dakota, and one more, Florida.
Yeah. So this is this is like a mixed bag, because although really those are bad numbers. 7 states voted for it essentially, and 3 against. As far as it goes, since Roe versus Wade was passed, these are the first 3 state level battles we've won. So that was actually a win in a way, to see that we could put it on the ballot, and in some of these states we could win with it. Or, and the win, of course, means just that it's not enshrined in the Constitution. And in the case of Florida, the win means they kept it as at a 6-week heartbeat bill. Nebraska, I think it was, is going even further and adding extra protections, which is great. But I think they have to get that past one more election. I think in their state you have to win twice in 2 different elections. So we'll see. But either way, for those 3 states, that's really good news for us, because it means we can do it. Very bad news, the other 7 states, which are joining, a whole handful of others, because that's really hard to overturn. I don't know if we can overturn that. And so disgusting. It's not like these measures they had going are even just moderate. No, they're extreme. They're either, up to birth or up to viability, which would be around, in the 22 weeks, 23. So it's just so sad, especially when you see states like Montana. I did not expect Montana to pass that. They're a red state. They have passed pro-life laws in their legislature previously, like very good pro-life laws. To see this happen, it's very sad on a lot of levels. And I think what it shows is that when people are forced to vote between what they view as no abortion or all abortion, a lot of them will vote for all abortion, which is just devastating.
Yeah, that's a shame, because Montana, there's a key Senate race the Republicans won in there. So
right,
which
Trump won. They won a Senate race, and they still did this. And part of that is the fear mongering, and that's what really infuriates me. Her campaign and the Democrats in general, they have this lie going that women are going to lose miscarriage care if they don't vote for these measures, and that's just a lie. And that they're not going to be treated for ectopic pregnancies. Again, it's just a lie. But a lot of women that are more reasonable, more moderate, they're just naive, and they believed this. They think they're protecting themselves and their daughters from these. They think if they have a miscarriage, they might die because they won't be able to receive care. It's just not true. But not only were they lied to about this, but a lot of these measures were written in such a way as to deceive them when they voted into thinking that it was necessary, to save their lives. Or they were just sneaky about how they were worded, that it wasn't clear that how far it would allow abortion. And some of them are saying that you don't need parental consent, and that wasn't clear in a lot of them. People vote based on that little blurb that they read when they go in. A lot of them aren't really up on the issues, and they believe the things they heard about it, which is, we need to do a better job, I guess, also combating that. But it's very hard. Those lies are insidious.
So now Trump has been elected for a bit over a week. He's president-elect. He's made some announcements about who he's going to appoint to certain positions in the last few days. What do you think of those announcements?
Some really good, some I'm not as familiar with, and a couple of them sort of left field for me. I like Marco Rubio. I voted for him in the primary in 2016, and he's more typical conservative Republican. So Secretary of State for him, I'm very excited, and I'm just happy to see him in a role. And they have not had the best relationship, him and Trump. The whole little Marco thing.
Little Marco.
The water bottle and all that.
So, that was, of course, that's going viral now.
Yeah, I know. Again, poor guy. But happy for him. There are some really good ones in there that I wasn't as knowledgeable about, but his choice for the CIA director, I think it's John Ratcliffe. He seems really good. He was one of the ones that didn't buy into the Hunter Biden laptop disinformation thing and the whole Russian collusion. He was speaking out against that at the time when 51 intelligence agents were lying about it. So I think that's a good choice. Some I'm just making myself more familiar with. You know, he chose the Fox News host to be Secretary of Defense, and I only knew him as the Fox News host, so I was like, wow, what a choice. But now I'm becoming acquainted with him, and apparently he has a long 20-year history in the military and leading battalions and served in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, okay, maybe that's a great choice. Also, he has a really great attitude about wokeness in the military and eliminating that, which is just a scourge on our military, and was entering it even when my dad was in 20 plus years ago. So very glad. I think that one will turn out, even though it was shocking. Kristi Noem was a little weirder for me. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Oh yeah,
Governor
she's
of
the governor of South Dakota. Yeah,
South Dakota. Now, some people are big fans of her. I've never
she's
been a big
pretty
fan.
good. She's pretty good.
She's pretty good. She's just it's really just she's sort of an odd character, if you ask me. And the whole crazy, the whole crazy thing with the dogs. I don't know if you followed it, but
Yeah.
some crazy thing with her dogs. I won't even go into it. I just think she's a little bit of an odd character, and so to choose her for Homeland Security as well, I was like, why don't we choose somebody who has a resume with some kind of security, national security, or law enforcement? I would have expected that. You know who I think is going to be great is the guy they chose for the border. And
That was my next question.
yeah. Do you have his name? His name?
It's Tom Homan or something.
Tom Homan, yeah.
Yep.
That guy is a stone cold killer. But, in a good way, because his whole argument is sort of like zero tolerance policy, but it's because he believes this unrestricted immigration causes more crime, which hurts American citizens. And he said, he's witnessed like women and children horrifically affected by these policies when the cartels come in and traffic these people across the border. So I think he's got a righteous anger, but he does not mess around. And they tried, he's been questioned before Congress and all this, and they tried all their tricks and toxic empathy and all those things, and he always had an amazing answer for it. And he seems no nonsense. I think that is one of the best picks he's made so far.
That was, no. I love that clip with him and AOC.
Yeah, I love that clip too. And the other representative, what is her name? It's like Jayapal or something along those lines. She was hitting her gavel and she was yelling like, silence, silence. And he was like, you work for me, you work for me. I was like, wow, yeah, I love that. They do work for us. He is not afraid, and he's going to do what he has to do. And the big question with, Trump's whole border policy, can he do it? He talks a big game. He didn't really follow through in the first 4 years, but he had a lot of opposition. This time he's got both houses of Congress and he has got the mandate. Is he going to do it? I think with this guy, he will. And I think it will be humane. They said specifically they're going to go after the criminals, and that's going to take them a long time before they worry about anything else. So yeah, that's a good pick. Elise Stefanik, she's going to be the ambassador to the UN, I think. She's a good pick. She's a solid conservative. I like Vivek Ramaswamy. I wanted him to get an actual cabinet position. I don't know if you saw the announcement yesterday. He's going to be working with Elon in the Department of Government Efficiency, which is not a real...
I didn't see that.
You didn't see it? Oh, it's actually really exciting. So it's not a real government department, but they're going to create it, and it's going to be working in conjunction with the government to basically just demolish regulation and unnecessary agencies. Elon says there were something like 350 totally superfluous agencies. He wants to get that down to at least 99, which would be a huge improvement. And Vivek is going to be working with him just to try to reduce the size of government. I like that. I think Vivek's good for it. I think Elon's good for it. I actually think it's going to be very humorous, too. They said they're going to have a website with a running tally of our money being wasted in various ways, so we can see it and we can weigh in on what we want them to eliminate. I love that. So, but I wanted to see Vivek in maybe an official cabinet position just because I like him and I thought he deserved it. But this will still be good.
What do you think about what Trump said about the Department of Education?
So I'm not sure how that will work in practice, saying he wanted to get rid of the Department of Education, but I am a small government Republican and I do hate the public school system, not in theory, but in practice, because I think it's become so inundated with wokeness and liberal policy measures. And, the Department of Education, it's a relatively recent department. We didn't have it for decades and decades in our country's history, and then they developed it in the relatively recent history. Has it done much? Has it really improved anything? As Trump was pointing out, we're not winning any awards across the globe for our students. So the theory behind that is that they'll eliminate it. It will go to the local level, and that it should run just as well or better. I support it because in theory, I think it will run just as well or better. I think these people do more harm than good in general. I think they're more political than anything. When you listen to the people that are in charge of it right now, they're just awful. And the things they have put into the schools, and that they're making sure the students are, I think, propagandized in a lot of really unsavory ways. I think that will improve that a lot. I send my child to a private school because I don't trust the public school system whatsoever. Like, it would be nice if there was a day where I trusted it, because there's a very good public school near my house as far as test scores and all that go. I just still don't trust it. I think this would be a good first step in getting those bureaucrats out of it and getting it on the local level, where maybe people are a lot more conservative actually than what's coming down from the top.
Yeah, no. And like, just think if parents didn't have to spend thousands every year putting their kids in private schools, think, that can maybe get the birth rate up. Maybe they could have
Oh
more
yeah.
kids.
No, it absolutely could. I've just got the one son, but there are families in my son's private school who have 4 kids, 5 kids, and it is not cheap. I know the school gives some discounts, but I know it's a real struggle for them. And then we have to pay property taxes on top of it that go into the public schools. That's the worst part. So you're paying twice, and if you have multiple kids, you're paying exponentially more. It would be huge if the public schools were trustworthy. So some of these families, I would still prefer the private for the Christian element. But some people are comfortable at church and home. They would feel like they could handle that, and they would want to use the public school, but they just can't trust it.
So, in terms of, I'm curious, have you heard Trump or someone else since the election talk about Keystone XL? Because if you remember, Joe Biden on his first day in office, he cancels the permit for it. First day.
Oh, it was awful. Oh, I remember. I have not heard anybody say anything official. I've just heard it like through the grapevine. People saying, is this going to be back on the table now? Is this going to be a priority? I suspect it will. Trump has talked so much about liquid gold and said, with RFK, because RFK is like the environmental lawyer, he's going to let him handle health, but he's not going to let him touch oil.
Yeah.
And
He
good.
said that in his speech.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. And he's so funny. And I love that Trump is honest like that, because a lot of people would hide the parts they're not going to let you be involved with, but he's very straightforward about it. And that's one of the reasons people voted for him, and they like him. You know what you're going to get. So we're definitely going to get a focus on fracking and oil. I would suspect they are going to get that going again. Yeah, this is a good thing, I think. So I haven't heard anything official, but unofficially, a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah, because as you know, that connects to my part of Canada. And Trudeau, like, I worked in oil and gas
Yeah.
for a long time. I've been out of work since May. I've been doing contract work in politics to pay the bills. But Trudeau's carbon tax is what's killing the oil industry. And of course, Pierre Poilievre, the conservative, who will most likely win, is running to axe the tax. That's his words. And so I just think, if we could have two friendly right-wing governments in power, I think we had that with George Bush and Stephen Harper.
Right.
We had that in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney. Mulroney was the conservative here in Canada. So hopefully we can get that again. And hopefully it's good for oil and gas, because
That would be huge.
Because, like, for those who don't know, the province of Alberta is kind of like the Texas
Yeah.
of Canada, and it, it's not doing that great because of the carbon tax. And there's a few other reasons as well, but the carbon tax would solve a lot. Keystone XL would solve even more
Yeah.
for
Same
on
for
both
us.
sides of the border.
Exactly. And, the electric vehicle mandates. I have nothing against electric vehicles. I'm not sure how much they actually improve anything, but, if that's what people prefer. But mandating them to me is nuts. Um, I'm glad they're going to reverse some of that stuff. That will be good. It was like everything the Biden administration did was so performative with such little positive yield for the people of the country. It's like everything is virtue signaling. Nothing is practical. And that's why the economy did so poorly.
Yeah, and in terms of the mandates, apparently they've abolished a lot of those mandates in Europe because they're just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Uh, and and those cars are expensive too. They're
Yep.
expensive to buy, expensive to repair. Like the common person who makes 40,000 a year, that's going to eat up a lot of his paycheck.
And the common person might want to hold on to their gas guzzling car for a lot longer without having to replace it, sooner with one of these. So that was not a worker friendly or a middle class friendly policy, and nothing is, and that's why they've become really the party that's out of touch, sort of the elitist party. These things they want to pass, they only work for the higher echelons of society. Oh yes, I agree, they are not sustainable. um, and maybe they could be at some point, but they're not quite yet. And there's issues with how those batteries are produced and disposed of. I mean, they really don't solve every issue that they would be hoping to solve. And it's so
Yeah.
funny that Elon Elon is on board with Trump, and Elon, he'd sell more cars if these things stayed in effect, but it's not his priority.
Well, I mean, if anyone can make them economic, I think Elon could.
Yeah,
Just you got to give him time, and of course he's doing trying to get to Mars and all this stuff. And
absolutely. And I love the Cybertruck. My little son, it counts the Cybertrucks, and we cheer every time we see one. The Cybertruck is cool.
is it cooler than a snow tow truck?
Maybe.
It's an inside joke there.
Yeah, that's a little joke.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're coming up on an hour, which is what we thought about. And my question for you, as an American, as a Christian, a mom, a family person, what are your final thoughts on this election? The good, the bad. Let's hear it.
Yes. Okay. My final thoughts, firstly, praise God. I think this was a huge win against a very evil agenda that has been taking hold for a long time, and is the longer it's in place, the harder it's going to be to reverse. It's already hard to reverse. So, having a 6-year-old, I can see how much of this, particularly gender messaging, they throw at him through shows and the public schools, because my nieces and nephews ran into it in the public schools. And this to me is number one, that we're going to maybe see a return to normalcy in this regard. Our young girls don't have to worry, hopefully, about sports and things like that. So my first thing is just praise God. I think it was an answer to prayer. Trump is a very imperfect man. I'm not even sure he's a Christian. You may or may not be. I think he's probably a pretty immature one, not in an offensive way, but just in his knowledge of it, if he is one, and I hope so. But I think still it's a big win, because God can use people, and I think he pretty clearly used him. That's my opinion. Where we're going to go from here, we are going to have a fight. It's going to be a dog fight. And the conservative Christians are going to have to come out and be loud, because as we talked about, every party has moved left. The Democrats have gone so far left, there's nowhere else to go but the cliff. But the Republicans have taken up a lot of that space and moved toward the center. As more of them moderate, especially on these social issues, it's going to be important that the conservative Christians speak out, especially on the state level, that we're trying to get these things passed. So I think we rest for a little while and rejoice and just have fun with it, because the last time he won, Trump, he was such a questionable character. I voted for him, but I didn't feel joy. I was like, we'll see how this goes. Hopefully this goes well. This time I'm joyful. I'm happy. I think this is a big win. But we have a lot of work to do. And some of that's going to be just pushing back even against Republicans that will be tempted to cede grounds to the left. So I think also Trump's going to have a big fight ahead of him, because they are not going to go quietly into this good night. They are down, but not out. And the Democrats are dogfighters. So we'll see what they do, see what they bring against him. We don't know how tomorrow is going to go, but this is a good week. We enjoy it, and we get ready. We get ready for the battle, basically.
Yeah, no, like I was, I listened to Les Wheeler's show fairly often, and she was talking about who's going to be the head of the Senate. Is it going to be Scott or
Yeah.
Thune or
Cornyn.
yeah, because there's a lot of questionable characters in the running. So,
and a lot of them that people would consider not particularly friendly toward Trump's agenda. So I think a lot of Republicans, we do fear. We have seen Republicans be in power and get very little done. And this is the time to get stuff done. We have big things that we can get done with the border and the economy and all these issues, and they need to do it. So we're going to see if they do it. I think they know they need to. They realize what the American people expect of them, particularly what Republicans expect of them. So I'm optimistic. That's it. I'm optimistic, and we'll see how it goes. And I think it could be sort of a return to patriotism in America that we haven't seen in a really long time, which would be a good thing. And hopefully a return to family values, even if we're softer on some of these things than we'd like. Just normalcy and some reasonable norms coming back into the American consciousness would be huge. And I think we're going in that direction.
all right, wonderful. So yeah, we're just north of an hour here. Thank you for those words, Jackie, and thanks for coming back on. I can't remember the last time you came on.
It was quite a while ago, more than a year, I think. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, quite a while. I'm thinking of doing kind of a pro-life roundtable discussion. I'm just throwing this around. Like I'll have some from the States, probably you, because you're heavily involved, and your pop was heavily involved in it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of bringing on Cam, and I'm thinking of bringing on Tamara from Europe. I don't know if you saw the show I did with her.
Yeah, she'd be wonderful.
Yeah, so a pro-life roundtable, but of course the time zone, trying to get everyone at the same time is like a nightmare. So.
I'm only an hour, so I'm probably more flexible. Yeah, I would love to do it. That'd be a lot of fun. Let me know.
All right, yeah, so hopefully we'll get that underway. All right, so yeah, I will shut this down. Like the video, subscribe everyone, and thanks for tuning in, and God bless.
Thanks, guys.